Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Designs by Dana. I'm Dana and I'm also close to my heart maker, and I am working on day 11 for Christy's Beautiful Life 30-day sketch challenge, and I am currently working also on a bingo card that I created just for fun. And so the first thing I'm going to do is draw my bingo element, and these are items that I modified from Christy's bingo card to meet my needs of things I have laying around my studio that I haven't used in years, just want to use up, and different techniques and embellishments. So let's pull and see what we're going to work on for this particular layout. So I drew sequins, so that's something that I'm going to try to incorporate on this layout. Now let's pull in the sketch and the photos and see what we have to work with. So this sketch is created by Brandy Joe, and instead of doing 3 photos, I've pulled, or 2 photos, excuse me, I pulled in 3 photos. And these are photos of my husband fishing several years ago. And this is a big old catfish he caught. It was over 5 pounds, he said, and it looks like it was about 2 foot long. So this was a exciting fish that he caught in a very small lake near our house. So it was unusually large for the size of the lake that he was fishing at, so we captured that. So I have some paper picked out that I think I want to use for this. So I'm going to get this out of the way and get my papers brought in, and we'll get started. Okay, I'm going to start a little differently this time and pull in my Bait and Tackle stamp and thin cut set. I'm going to use I'm going to use everything in this stamp set. So I'm going to show you a way to stamp all of these items a little quicker rather than putting all of them on separate blocks and stamping them individually. So I've pulled this out and I've got the carrier sheet here. My paper I cut is about 4.5 by 4.5. And before I ink that up, I realized that this is a brand new stamp set I've not used. It's not brand new, but I've had it for a while and I've never used it. So I'm going to season that before I put my ink on there. Now I'm just going to use that carrier sheet like a block and ink everything up right on the carrier sheet. So I'm inking that up, getting it nice and juicy. And then I'm going to use my carrier sheet and just put that right down on my piece of paper and press that into the paper really well. And it feels a little weird because it's not like using a typical block. So I'm going to turn that over and then press on the back of the paper as well, just to make sure I get a really good impression. And then I pull that up, I've got everything stamped at one time as opposed to individual blocks. Now I could have also used a Mitzi to do this, but then again, I'm pulling everything off of my carrier sheet onto the stamping platform and back and forth. So this is just a little quicker way, little hack for you on how you can do these all at one time. Now I'm going to just put these all on my thin cuts, or my dies on here, and then I can run it through my die cut machine at the same time as well. Now this little hack I learned from a fellow maker, Katie Taylor. She taught this in a video where she actually showed how to do this technique using all stamps and making this a actual pattern paper for a background. And it was a brilliant idea, and I just love how she incorporated that, and I've used it since then for various projects. So I'm going to run this through my die cut machine, and I have now all these pieces I'm going to use for embellishments, and I'm going to color in my fish. I prepared over to the side my inks. I'm using Harbour and Pine and some clear shimmer brush, and I am kind of blending those together to make like a blue, green, teal color for my fish. And this is sped up a little bit, so I'm not going quite this fast in real time, but I am moving a little quick because the wet ink does dry really quick on my paper. So I want to be able to blend that as quickly as I can as I go through this process. So you can see I'm kind of mixing the colors as I go, blending them on the brush and on the paper. throughout this process. I'm kind of starting with the top of the fish, or what I would consider to be the back of the fish, and working my way down to the bottom or the belly, and then kind of blending them together as I go through this process. I really am so thrilled with how these fish turned out in the coloring process. And my goal here was to kind of mimic the way the actual fish looked in the picture, because I noticed in the picture there was a lot of greens and dark color blues in the photo. So I was really looking to mimic that as much as I could in the artistic way of coloring these in and getting that blue, green, teal look. And the shimmer brush just kind of brought in kind of the shininess of the scales of the fish, if you will. And I think that also helped tie in with the sequins that I pulled on my bingo card. So I'm going to be pulling in the sequins later on in the video as my embellishments. I think it really helped kind of pull everything together in the end. So I'm finishing up this guy, just adding some darkness and some shadow here and there. And I'm going to hold that up for you. And again, I'm really happy with how that turned out and the realistic look that it gave. So now I'm going to bring in my paper. And this paper came from an older pack I had in my stash. And it was called Into the Wild. And it was more of a juvenile pack. But I think it works really well for what I'm accomplishing here. And I'm going to do that paper tearing that the sketch offered. And because this is such a large piece of paper and I want to tear it way down here at the bottom, I want to have a little bit of a controlled tear. So what I did is I brought in my water brush and I just wet my paper along the tear line. And you can see how easy that was for me to tear just by giving the paper that wet line to tear along. And I had to think about which way I was going to tear that because I want to make sure the white core of my paper shows. And notice that when I tear, I'm tearing in the same direction the whole time. So I always tear towards myself. Again, so I can make sure that that white core shows through and it shows through consistently. So I don't go back and forth. I think that's a critical thing to always remember when you're using close to my heart cardstock. So I'm bringing in my base here and I'm going to put those down at the top and the bottom. And I have this pattern piece that I had thought would fit on the middle and it doesn't fit. So I'm going to have to kind of go back to the drawing board and I find a different piece of cardstock that I can use for my base. So now I have this scrap of blue pattern paper that I want to kind of layer in my torn pieces. So I'm going to play around with that and get that extra layer of paper tearing in. And you see here I'm going to tack down my green piece. And since this is a smaller piece, I can have a little bit more control to tear with that. And again, see how I'm tearing that towards myself and not back and forth so I get my white line in my tear. And now I can kind of play around with that. Now I don't have a lot of paper left of this pattern, so I'm going to kind of play around and do some ways to conserve some of that and cut it down so I can also use it for the top portion as well. So you kind of see how I'm playing around with that and measuring it, cutting it down, and using my scraps so that I can make this one piece work for both the top and the bottom. And, you know, obviously everything underneath that green is going to be covered up. So it really doesn't matter if it's the same size or not under the green. So as long as I can get just enough to show through for what I need, that's all that matters. And I'm able to accomplish that with the piece I have. So I'm happy about that. And that kept me from going back to the drawing board and finding more pattern paper to work with. So this is a kit that I'm close to wrapping up everything in the kit, and I can kind of get rid of this one and get it out of my stash, which I'm really happy about, using up a lot of things in my stash right now. So I'm going to bring in my photos and play around with them. I thought that I might try to angle them like the sketch, but in the end I think I want them straight across because they're just going to look better. So now I can go ahead and bring in my embellishment. Okay, so my layout is completed, and apparently I did not have the record button on while doing the embellishment portion of the layout process. So I used all of my stamps that I cut out and colored in as my embellishments, and I have this journaling block that I did as well. For the journaling, I did bullet point style journaling. So it says biggest catfish Rob ever caught at Lake Remembrance. It was over 5 pounds, 2 foot long. Jordan helped reel it in. Sharon took it home and ate it, and this was in 2017. I did, of course, pop some things up, you know, thick and thin, typical to my style. I popped this piece up to give these mountains a little bit of dimension here, and then, of course, added in my title with these wooden die cut pieces here. So I hope you like that. I apologize that you didn't get to see that process. I did get to add in the sequins, so let me bring in my bingo card. I'm getting close to having a bingo here, so just working through that, which is a lot of fun. It's kind of forcing me to bring in some embellishments that I might not have otherwise thought to do. So if you're liking that and enjoying these process videos, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing. So let's bring in the sketch and do a quick little compare. I kind of followed through with the true to the sketch and the paper tearing on the top and the bottom, but other than that, I really kind of switched it up quite a bit. So I added a third photo, and rather than angling the photos, I decided to go straight across. With that third photo, it just really fit better to go straight across than trying to squish them in a little bit angled. So yeah, and then I didn't do, you know, the mixed media and the flowers. I did put my title across the top. Originally, I thought I might do it down here, but it seemed to fit a little bit better up at the top. So I really liked this sketch, liked doing the paper tearing, which was actually one of my techniques on the bingo card. But since I didn't pull it, I'm not going to go ahead and mark it off. But I enjoyed this layout. There was lots of moving parts with the stamping and the die cuts and the inking. Lots of little technique in there. So if you have questions about that, I think that all of that was caught on video and you saw that, but just not putting the embellishments together, which is my favorite part, but sometimes you don't really need to see that happen anyway. But any questions, just put those in the comments. I'll be happy to get back to you. And stay tuned. This is day 11, so I'm working through the month, and we'll be back tomorrow with another one. Thanks so much for your time and watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.